So you can see how that readily goes down to a point. And if I wanted this to be round, you'd still start out by squaring it off and then go from 4 sides to 8, working it off the corners. You want to approach it in a very methodical manner. That's the most effective way to move the material. Now the tip, because it has less mass, is cooling down quite a bit. And you have to remember the anvil's like a big ice cube. It draws the heat right out of the steel. So I've got that drawn down to a point, so that's drawing out. Now I'm going to bend the material. Now initially I'll start this out off the edge of the anvil, kind of hitting it about a 45-degree angle and feeding it out as I go. In doing that, it causes it to curve right around. And you're always reassessing what you're doing as you work. People often ask, why do you tap the anvil as you're working? And that's to maintain a rhythm. You're essentially like a machine, and you want to get as much heat done per heat as possible. So you want to maintain that rhythm so you can get as much done with each heat. Now, quenching the steel, it's best not to quench it while you have color in it. It's heated up, and actually if I took a magnet, as long as it's got color, the magnet would not attract because the molecules are all moving around and they're trying to realign themselves. Once the color is gone, you can go ahead and quench it. But if you do it prior to that, it makes it real brittle and it'll crack and it could just fall off if you're not careful. It's more of a problem with the high carbon tool steels than it is with the mild steel.
Blacksmithing has been around for many, many years. Like other traditional trades, the craft, as well as the role of the blacksmith, have seen changes over the years.
Well, the medieval blacksmith was really the one who made any kind of metal technological items of the time, whether it be a weapon, a utensil, a household item. Those were all made by the blacksmiths. They were a very important part of the community. The blacksmith created the armor, the swords, the spearheads. They created hinges and locks, and anything that was done with metal was done by the local blacksmiths.
Nothing could really get done without the blacksmith. All the other craftsmen had to come to the blacksmith to get their tools made, or even the normal everyday village people in the course of their lives, they needed something either to be mended or manufactured by the blacksmith. And that's really not the case anymore.
I think what's changed the most is the method of heating the metal, the method of working the metal. We have power hammers today where in the old days you used to have to pound everything by hand. Now you can hold it in a power hammer and have it do the striking for you. So you can do a lot more work in a much shorter time. We have gas forges today. These are great advances. I also happen to think that we lose something in that. I think that the actual hands-on, where everything is done by hand and it's done in the traditional manner, I think imparts a connection to the past. It connects me with that blacksmith of 500 years ago who did it the exact same way that I would be doing it today.
Though advances in technology have given the blacksmith more options in terms of equipment, one major event in history would change blacksmithing forever: the Industrial Revolution.
The Industrial Revolution almost killed blacksmithing as a trade. Everything that was having to be handmade one at a time, training from childhood into adulthood, going from apprenticeship to the master craftsman, was replaced by a machine which could stamp out, again, whether it's 1 or 100,000 of them, they all looked exactly alike. For the average person, in some ways, it was a better deal because if they needed to replace something, they could go to the store, get it, and replace it.
What happened is it put the blacksmith in a different role in terms of it's not profitable to make a shovel or a pick when you can crank one out as and mass produced. So you kind of shift roles and take on different areas of work.
I think a lot of them went in, relearned what they needed to, and came out as millwrights, working the lathes, working the machines, fixing the machines. Yes, the parts may have been made, but there still had to be somebody putting them together. I think that it also, in a way, the Industrial Revolution freed up the blacksmith. It wasn't as necessary anymore, but I think that it gave them a way to spend more time on their art rather than just the craft, and turn these utilitarian items into something that was more. And I think that overall it was a good thing for the blacksmith.
Blacksmithing is starting to come back into the vogue again because people are interested in things which are handmade, artistic. So most of the modern blacksmiths are now much more what we would call artisan smiths, because most of our products that we make now are much more of an artisan form.
I think what's changed the least has got to be the love of what we do. I think that if you became a successful blacksmith 500 years ago, it had to be a part of your heart. It had to be a calling, not just a job. Because there were easier ways to make a living, maybe not as lucrative in some ways, but I think that in order to be a blacksmith today, again, it has to come from the heart. It has to be something inside you that draws you to that forge and that hammer, because again, especially as a hobby, there are a lot of easier things to do. But if you're a blacksmith today, there's nothing else you'd rather do.
Well, I think it's interesting that the revival of blacksmithing, it kind of happened. There was a craft revolution in the early 70s, and it came back in with ABANA, which is the National Blacksmith Association, Artist Blacksmith Association of North America. And there's been great interest in both the historical reenactment and going off into new directions. And it encompasses a number of different people with a number of different interests.
If anyone is interested in becoming a blacksmith, I think that with the internet, you shouldn't have a problem finding a local group near you that teaches blacksmithing. Most of the guilds, there's very little cost involved in joining them, and there's really no cost involved in being a part of the learning process within the guild. Find some local blacksmiths and, see if it's for you.
It's a real interesting area to work in, and it's fun. You get to play in the fire and get dirty.